On today's Star Wars Legends Lore episode, we take a closer look at the Katana Fleet. Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another quick Star Wars Legends Lore episode. The Katana Fleet was a pre-Clone Wars era Republic project, which was lost on its maiden voyage and recovered by both the Empire and New Republic over 50 years later. At full strength, the Katana Fleet included exactly 200 Dreadnought Class Heavy Cruisers. The fleet was unique in not only its size and singular composition, but also its slave rigging, which allowed the cruisers to be ran with a smaller than standard crew, although 300,000 persons were still necessary to operate the entire fleet. The slave rigging would end up playing a role in the fleet's disappearance, but that's not really important for today's video. We're looking at how powerful the fleet is in full working order. The only ship type within the Katana Fleet was the Dreadnought Class Heavy Cruiser. Many of you guys know that I quite like this ship. It's very plain and simple, but also serviceable and even effective. By the time of the Battle of Endor, the ship type was admittedly a little out of date, but still nothing to gawk at. No single dreadnoughts weren't standing up to Mon-Cal cruisers, but when you get multiple ships together, they could do some serious damage. At 600 meters long, Dreadnought Class Heavy Cruisers are decently armed with 20 quad laser cannons, 10 turbo lasers, and a mix of additional laser cannons and ion cannons. The Thrawn Trilogy actually emphasizes the effectiveness of these ion cannons, especially as the fleet works together. What's notable is that a single dreadnought is armed to take on both Starfighters and capital ships. It possesses both laser cannons and turbo lasers, and the ion cannons, which fire somewhat indiscriminately, can hit any target. The weakest aspect of the ship's weapon systems is the fact that it has only 10 turbo lasers, but that's what you get when you make a well-balanced vessel. All weapon systems are clumped in blisters across the ship's hull, which allows it to minimize blind spots, sort of like you see with Mon-Cal cruisers. Defensively, Dreadnought Class Heavy Cruisers were just okay when compared to modern ships like a Victory-class Star Destroyer. Both the shielding and the hull was comparatively much weaker. However, design-wise, the Dreadnought has no clear weaknesses. There's no visible hangar or shield bulbs or command center. The ships aren't very fast. In fact, I would go so far to say that they're slow and relatively bulky, even when compared to larger capital ships, and again, that's sort of due to the fact that they're a product of their time. Katana Fleet, however, isn't really known for having exceptional individual ships. What it's known for is having 200 really decent ships. One of the Empire's biggest mistakes was too heavily emphasizing large ships. Those who favored a flexible military doctrine like Grand Admiral Thrawn much preferred to have many smaller effective vessels. This is why something like the Katana Fleet makes a lot of sense, not only from a grand strategic point of view, but also in talking about the tactics of an individual battle. On a galactic scale, you can hit multiple points at once, as we see during the Thrawn campaign. For a specific battle, when you have a numerical advantage, you can flank your enemy, hit them from multiple points, take advantage of blind spots, etc. etc. So this is the true advantage of the Katana Fleet. Yes, all of the ships by the time of the Battle of Endor were fairly outdated, but there were 200 of them all in one spot, and all which could operate with a small crew. This flexibility is further aided by a very balanced loadout, which we just discussed. You know that due to the fleet's mix of quad laser cannons, turbo lasers, and ion cannons, you can take on anything from a dreadnought to a bunch of smaller fighters. Speaking of fighters, this brings us to one of the fleet's only weaknesses. It doesn't bring with it any starfighters. Individual dreadnoughts can protect themselves, but they can't hit back with starfighters of their own. We know in Star Wars that fighters are some of the best capital ship killers, especially bombers. If I were to refit the Katana Fleet, the very first thing I would do is make it so that the hangars could hold even just a squadron of fighters. That is very reasonable for a ship that's over half a kilometers in length, and even just a squadron with 12 fighters would really add up with 200 ships. None of this, however, answers the question of how powerful is the Katana Fleet. The answer is very powerful, so much so that during the Thrawn campaign, it was said that the fleet could actually change the balance of power within the entire galaxy. Thrawn would actually make off with a very large portion of the fleet, crewing it with Sparti-grown clones, which allowed him to cripple the New Republic. We didn't really see him use every ship in a single battle, but 200 dreadnoughts would certainly be a force to be reckoned with. If we're talking about the Battle of Endor without the Death Star, I think the Dreadnoughts would be able to take down the 30 Star Destroyers and the SSD. If you give each Dreadnought a squadron full of TIE fighters, then I also think you can take down the Death Star. The Battle of Endor is actually a really good example of why sometimes small ships can be better than a single large Dreadnought. If the Rebels had some sort of Super Star Destroyer analog instead of a flexible fleet with many small ships, the Death Star would have devastated them in a single shot. On the other hand, the loss of the Executor was an incredibly demoralizing and defeating moment for the Empire. Replace the Super Star Destroyer with the 10 or so regular Star Destroyers that you could make instead of it, and the Rebels don't have a single target that they can fire on or a ship that they can destroy for a morale victory. Flexible fleets are great, and the Katana Fleet is about as flexible as they come. Sure, the individual Dreadnought Class Heavy Cruiser is fairly outdated by the post-Battle of Endor standards, but had Grand Admiral Thrawn managed to defeat the New Republic, it would have been largely in part due to the Katana Fleet. What do you guys think? What's the largest battle that the Katana Fleet could have won, and do you agree with my thoughts about fleet design? Let me know all of that and more down in the comment section. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, this has been EckhartsLadder. May the Force be with you.